Kia ora koutou, no mai haere mai, and a very warm welcome to Marquee Matters, New Zealand's employment market update on an absolutely stunning day here in Tamaki Makaurau. Today we're looking at wage theft crackdown. Will new laws make a difference? Is your organisation prepared for the new wage theft laws? This week we're joined by Sanam Salmani, founder and host of Lenz podcast, to discuss the looming wage theft crackdown and what it means for businesses across New Zealand. With the new laws actually just passed, we'll explore whether these changes will truly protect workers and hold employers accountable. Also on today's show, boomerang bosses, a smart business move or a recipe for workplace tension. We'll explore our latest job opportunities across New Zealand. And lastly, we'll reveal our social media insights for the week, where we're asking if your staff are already beginning to feel burnout. Okay, so last week, looking at the stats there. So last week, our recent survey revealed that 38% of voters say that they have experienced an employer withholding wages. So wage theft has long been considered a serious issue affecting many workers, and recent legislative changes are aiming to address this problem. The new wage theft bill introduces tougher penalties, with employers facing fines of up to $30,000 for intentionally withholding wages from employees. However, on the other side of this coin, it opens up the conversation around how these stricter regulations will impact smaller businesses, particularly employer compliance, and the potential for unintended consequences in payroll administration. To help us unravel this topic, we're joined today by Sanam Salmani, founder and host of Lenz podcast. So great to have you back on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Shannon. That means I might have done an okay job the first time. So
you definitely did more than okay. We'll have you back anytime. So it's very fresh off the press, this news. So the new bill is aiming to make withholding wages from employees a criminal offence. And for those who may not be aware of this bill and what it means, could you give us a bit of an overview and your thoughts on if it's something that New Zealand needs?
Look, Shannon, this is so interesting because, like I mentioned before we jumped on, you guys have just timed this perfectly because the bill actually got passed yesterday. Not many people have picked it up, which is great because Frog Recruitment, hot off the press, with this stuff. So I think it's really interesting to see how it's kind of gone through. It's been kicking around for a couple of years. Essentially, it got brought in by the previous government. There was a minister that actually went through wage theft themselves, and that's why they brought it through, and it's all about amending the Crimes Act. So it's looking at that crimes legislation and effectively saying that, look, maybe now instead of going down the civil route, let's look at a criminal pathway for people to be able to recoup the money that's owed to them. What that actually means, though, is that employers who deliberately, and I really want to emphasize that, the fact that they intentionally do it, deliberately do it, if they withhold wages from an employee, they could face up to $30,000 of fines when it's just their company that's being looked at. And then in some cases, when you're looking at personal liability as an employer, as an individual, then we're talking about up to a year's jail time, as well as attacking on maybe 5,000 on there as well. I don't think the 5,000 seems as heavy hitting as much as the jail time does. So I can imagine, a lot of businesses and a lot of employers out there are quite fearful. And I'd like to just emphasize on the fact that, look, for those that are not fully understanding, it is intentional wage theft. So we're talking about not accidental mistakes in payroll. We're talking about actually going in, your employees maybe saying, hey, this doesn't look entirely right, and maybe the employer turning a blind eye or choosing not to investigate further. So it's a little bit different in that sense. But of course, we've got a bit of two sides to this. And I think that poll that you ran is amazing. I wish I had seen this and put out an episode a little bit later, because I could have used the stats and the data. But the problem is some people are sitting there on the fence going, look, was this actually that widespread of an issue? We see that in the poll that you've ran, 38% saying that they've had this happen to them. Then on the other side, you've got people saying, look, this is a very prevalent issue, especially with migrant workers. We need to crack down on this. So yeah, and now we've got the law kind of kicking fully into place.
Yeah, well, I must admit that when I looked through the run sheet for this week's show at the start of the week, I went, oh, wage theft, what's that? I had absolutely no idea, and then was kind of even more shocked when I saw the stats. I don't know. You always hear a few horror stories of when that happens, but think, oh, it's that's terrible, but surely an exception to the rule. So it sounds like it's about time that something is being done and it's actually been actioned. So what impact do you think these new laws will have on businesses across New Zealand?
Look, you pointed it out in the beginning, Shannon. Small businesses, they're gonna feel this, right? They're going to be the ones that are kind of dealing with this issue, rather than getting all that external resource and support that they would get like a larger business would. And it definitely, compliance now more than ever is going to be under scrutiny. It's going to mean a lot to make sure that your payroll processes are correct and airtight. And I did, as part of my day job, we did a recent webinar about end of financial year, and there was just a lot of discussion around payroll, kind of being done by people that might not know payroll inside and out. And if you're a business that doesn't really have a dedicated payroll person and you don't really know much about it, it is really important to get someone in or to do an audit and to really lift up the hood and kind of see what's going on. So now, with employees being able to go to the police if they feel like they've been underpaid, it's just something where employers need to take this a little bit more seriously. They need to really make sure that their payroll processes are up to standard and in place.
Yeah, so you mentioned payroll there, and I think before you said, look, it is about that intention, but it's a good reminder and motivation to get your processes right in the first place. Are the I guess kind of lack of understanding, is that where the biggest mistakes employers are making that lead to wage theft claims?
It's an interesting one, because I did an article about this. I also practice in Australia as well, and Australia just did their wage theft laws that came into place in January this year, and they had this similar scenario, right? So you've got people that are either intentionally doing things or things that happen as a payroll mistake or a blunder in payroll. And when it's a mistake, then that's one thing. But when we're looking at intentional, sometimes mistakes become intentional to a certain extent, which people are not really speaking about. The fact that you could potentially realize that there were deductions being made or something being done incorrectly, or maybe that you've underpaid somebody and you've turned a blind eye to that. Once you start doing that, then that's when it becomes intentional as well. And a lot of the things that get impacted is, and the way that an employer can get caught out is around, minimum entitlements, not paying employees correctly, failing to keep proper records in place. I've definitely had my fair share of cases where employers accidentally, I guess I would say accidentally, but giving the benefit of the doubt, they didn't realize that their payroll records are not in order, and all of a sudden employees are questioning pay slips and their pay slips are not up to scratch, and then you've got holiday pay being done incorrectly. We know the Holidays Act is a beast on its own, and it's very easy to get caught out in that. So there's a lot there where employees can pick apart and things can go wrong. But I would say that one thing that's really critical here, and that I've seen time and time again in every case, is it's about the fact that the employee normally raises issues, or they raise concerns, and the employer really doesn't follow through with that. We see that a lot more than an employer, making a mistake and then the employee targeting and going after them. So there is that balance there.
Sure. Just a bonus question here. Does that cover things like, I'm actually going back to some of my own past in Australia, not with people to people, it wasn't them. But does it cover either incorrect payment of super or KiwiSaver, or in some cases not paying that at all? So, it's put through in your pay slips, you presume it's going off to where it needs to be, and then find out, no, it was never paid at all. Does it cover that as well?
So it would, so look, they haven't really defined it very specifically in the legislation, which is a little bit of a tricky area. So it will depend on how the cases go. But from what we can see and understand, it's entitlements, it's anything that gets captured under wages. So I would say KiwiSaver to a certain extent would come under that. And usually the way that we build out KiwiSaver is quite different to super. So that's where you would see it kind of captured as part of salary and wages. So I would say safe to say that could be definitely included in, but we'll see as the cases go forward and things get tested on exactly where the line is drawn.
Sure. What's your advice for employers going, oh, we're going to have to up our game a little bit here, want to make sure we're doing the right thing? So how can they ensure that they're being compliant with existing and upcoming both wage theft laws, but also make sure that they're processing things correctly?
I think that the general consensus is always check your payroll systems, see what's going on. But more than that, I would say, and I know I've hammered into this, and Shannon, you're probably tired of hearing this too, but if an employee has an issue, if they say that, look, this has been underpaid, I don't feel like this is correct, just investigate into it. Take that time to look into it. If there is a visa that's suggesting that you need to pay $29 per hour, don't pay them $25 per hour. Just stick to the requirements and what's intended for these employers and as part of the visas. That's where we usually see things go wrong. And outside of that, just make sure that you're checking the minimum wage, that if you've got somebody kind of on that line, that you're bumping them up. All of those things will make a huge difference. And then as well as having a good payroll team, having good payroll systems in place, and making sure that if you see a red flag, you make sure you address the red flag. Don't just let it kind of sit on by.
Absolutely great advice there. Now, obviously, this is extremely fresh and new into place, but do you expect further wage-related reforms in the near future?
Look, I think we're definitely going to see things, especially as we kind of progress over the years. We're looking at Australia kind of moving in different direction. And so we are following suit with a lot of their laws that they're bringing in. I think that we'll definitely be looking at fair pay, transparency, and all of that. But to be honest, under this government, getting a bit political, it'll be interesting to see kind of what gets put forward. I think that if we have any reforms or anything like that, it might be under another government, but we'll see what gets pulled out of the box and what goes through, Shannon. To be honest, it's all fair game now. No one's put anything forward yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on again. You will definitely have another invitation. Welcome anytime. But from me personally, from knowing absolutely nothing about this at the start of the week, I feel like I've got a good grip on this now. So thanks for your help. There's also in the comments in the link, a link in the comments to get that round the right way. So if you're interested in what Sanam has to say, you can find out more and listen to the Law Lenz podcast.
Yep.
Okay, let's have a look at what our poll's going to bring up for us this week. All right, so today in Mahi Media, we're diving into the curious case of boomerang bosses. So when a former manager makes a grand return to the business, but is it a winning move or a workplace wobble? Now, the reasons for a boomerang boss tend to fall into two main categories. Either the business is restructured and is now in a position to bring back experienced talent, or the individual discovered that the grass wasn't actually greener elsewhere and is now backtracking on their career choices. So, unlike returning employees in general, a boomerang boss can have a much bigger impact. After all, they're leading a team that may have moved on in their absence. According to a report by sidehustles.com, 21% of employees are outright opposed to the return of a former manager, with over half believing that they could do a better job themselves. Ouch. The reception a returning leader gets often depends on why they left in the first place. So, were they part of the great resignation, chasing better pay? Did performance concerns play a role? Or were they just a casualty of market conditions? Another major factor is how the business handles their comeback. A transparent process that demonstrates that the decision is based on merit rather than favoritism or overlooking internal talent will go a long way in ensuring the team feels positive about the reboot. So, is a boomerang boss a brilliant reunion or an awkward sequel? I guess that all depends on the backstory. Let's take a look now at the hot jobs this week. Okay, so we've got two each featuring for Auckland and Wellington, and a range of different roles there. I'm going to selfishly promote the role that I'm working on, a key account manager within the retail space. So looking after a major account for a global brand. Quite a rare opportunity and really crucial to the business. So great to get in there working with one of New Zealand's biggest retailers. If you're interested in any of these roles, as always, get in touch with the teams in either Auckland or Wellington, and we can point you in the right direction and find out more. Okay, sorry about that. That is it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining me. I think I've already gone into weekend mode and wish I was out there enjoying the sunshine. We'd love to have you back here next week, and as always, we'd love to hear your comments as well. So let us know what you think about the developments and how things are going to move in the future. See you next time.